Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning. How are we doing today?
Good morning.
Hey, I'm very happy to be here with you guys. I'll tell you, I have a lot of information, and hopefully you'll enjoy everything, including a video of my flight into space, my 14-day mission as flight engineer to the International Space Station. But before that, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about myself and how I got to become an astronaut, because I think that's very important. And to further appreciate that, I want to start from when I was a kid. Ever since I remember when I was a kid, is that, you know, I'm first generation American, born here in California. But my parents are from Mexico, so what we used to do, they still maintain ties with Mexico, and so what we used to do is would spend 9 months in California and 3 months in Mexico. And during the 9 months, my parents would follow the harvest. They were farm workers, or we were farm workers, because I worked there too. We would spend 2 months in Southern California, Chino, Ontario area, and we would pick strawberries. And then after 2 months, we would move north to Salinas for another 2 months. There we would pick lettuce and more strawberries. And then we would go to our third and final stop up to Stockton, California, and we would spend the bulk of our time there, 5 months. There we would pick cucumbers, cherries, green tomatoes for market, peaches, and then we ended the harvest with grapes. That would take us to about November timeframe, from March to November. November, my dad would make the big announcement at home and say, kids, get 3 months worth of homework from your teachers, because we're going to Mexico. In Mexico, we didn't go to school, we self-studied. My mom would wake us up every morning, Monday through Friday, from 8 in the morning to 12 noon. Grandma's kitchen, we had a cup of hot cocoa, piece of French bread. It's all the cocoa you could drink, but you had to do your homework. And that's how we did it. And every year it repeated itself. So as you can see, it wasn't a very conducive environment to get a good education. That's why I always tell people, even though I was born in this great country of ours, I did not learn the English language in a proficient manner until I was about 12 years old, because so much interruptions in our education. But things changed for the better. When I was in the 2nd grade, last stop in Stockton, my father gets up and makes that announcement. Of course, I'm used to it. My siblings are used to it. See, that's us up there. There's actually 4 of us. The oldest one, just a picture. I'm the youngest one. I'm the one with a hat. And then my sister and my brother. And since I'm the youngest one, you know, basically what happened was my father makes the announcement. We all go to school, and I make the announcement to my teacher. I said, Miss Young. Miss Young was a young Asian teacher, very pretty. You know, they say, you know, 2nd grade is when you have your first crush, you know. Guilty as charged. It was me and Miss Young in my mind, right? Anyway, I tell Miss Young, I say, Miss Young, my dad says you can please prepare 3 months worth of homework for me. And she looked at me with this frustrated look. And you can understand her frustration, because she had my 3 other older siblings in her class, and she had done the same thing. So I guess 4th time was the charm for her. And she looked at me, pointed at me, and said, you tell your parents I'm going to come home today and speak with them. Man, I got scared. The teacher never comes to our house. See, you got to understand the dynamics of my family. My dad, he was always grouchy, in a bad mood, short on words, quick on justice, if you know what I mean. And my mom was the opposite. It's kind of yin and yang. She was so caring and nurturing. I think this is why I came out so centralized, so stable, because I had both extremes tugging at me. And so When she said she was gonna come home to speak to my parents, school was out. When school was out, usually I walk home with my siblings. Man, I didn't wait. I said, I had some juicy gossip, so I'm gonna run home and tell my parents. I remember I was running home, I felt like Paul Revere, right? The teacher's coming, you know? And I get home, and my parents always are home before school's out. They pride themselves on being home. And sure enough, I open the door, and my dad's there in the living room taking off his work boots. You know, I told you he was a grouchy guy, right? Well, he's even grouchier after work when he's tired. And so I tell my dad, hey Dad, he says, yes son? I said, I talked to Miss Young and she said she's coming over. I think she has something to do with, he didn't even wait for me to finish my sentence. He got up and he started taking off his belt. You see, my dad has a different judicial system than the U.S. judicial system. He likes to jump to conclusions, dole out the punishment, and then he asks what happened. All right? And I don't know, I backpedaled so much and I blurted everything out, see what would stick, and apparently the fact that we're going to Mexico made him doubt, so he didn't whip me, thank God. Then I tell my mom, and my mom, completely different reaction, right? She puts on that Macaulay Culkin Home Alone look and says, we gotta clean up the house. The teacher's coming, we gotta sweep and mop, and we gotta cook a nice dinner for her, right? Because that's what we do. And sure enough, Miss Young came, we had a nice dinner, and then my dad invited her to the living room, my mom brought coffee, and they dragged me along because Miss Young did not speak Spanish, and my parents did not speak English at the time, so I was the official translator. And so Miss Young then sits down and thanks them for the dinner, but she says, Mr. Hernandez, I've had the pleasure of having your 4 kids in my class. Right now I have your youngest one. Says, and let me tell you, they all show great promise. They're good kids. And but you moving around is affecting their education. And my dad immediately puts a halt to her and said, wait, hang on, Miss Young, wait. We're not like other farm workers. We believe in education. Yes, my wife and I only had a 3rd grade education, but we believe in education. And yes, my kids work picking fruits and vegetables Saturdays and Sundays, 7 days a week during the summer. But when they're school, they are in school. They don't miss school. And then Miss Young says, yes, but you moved 3 different school districts. And you know what my dad's response was? He said, yes, but we move on a Saturday. Which was true. We finished school Friday, moved Saturday, Monday we were in a new school district. We didn't miss a day of school. And then Miss Young said, but yeah, you go to Mexico for 3 months. Yes, but they take your homework and they self-study. So in my dad's eyes, he was meeting his obligation, fulfilling his obligation of giving us a good education. Never mind that it was so disruptive. So Miss Young was a little frustrated, and then she thought about it a little bit, and then she laid out a slight smile. She got an idea, and she did something brilliant. Miss Young first puts my dad up in a pedestal. She tells my dad, Senor, your kids tell me you've been working many years in agriculture. You must be an expert in terms of plants and trees, right? Oh man, you didn't have to tell that to my dad. My dad starts putting up his collar and says, well, I'm not sure I can consider an expert, but I do know a thing or 2 about plants. What can I help you with? And then Miss Young laid out a big smile because she knew he took the bait. And Miss Young says, well, Mr. Hernandez, let me give you a problem that hopefully you can tell me what happens and it'll help both of us. And my dad said, okay. He says, imagine I give you a fruit tree in a small potted plant. I'm going to give it to you, Mr. Hernandez. My dad says, okay, here's what I want you to do with it. I want you to find the best fertile land. Dig a hole, plant that tree. And I want you to water it and fertilize it like the good expert that you are. Can you do that for me? My dad dad says, yes, of course, I can do that. That's easy. Yeah, absolutely, Miss Young. I'll take good care of that tree. And then Miss Young says, in 3 months, I want you to go and find another piece of land equally as good. Dig a hole. Transplant that same tree over. And I want you to keep watering it and fertilizing it. Take good care of it. Just like you know how. Can you do that? Well, my dad's face was puzzled. But he said, yeah, I guess I could do that. And then Miss Young says, and in another 3 months, what's more, every 3 months I want you to transplant that tree into good land, and you're always taking care of it. Then she looks at him and says, you who are an expert in agriculture, what happens in the long run to that tree? And my dad thinks about it. He knows the answer immediately. He says, well, Miss Young, that tree's not going to die because you're taking care of it. But I will tell you this, you're going to stunt its growth. It's going to stay small, weak, and if it's a fruit tree, it probably won't bear fruit. Why? Because you need the roots to grow deep. So you need to leave it in one place so the branches can grow big and strong. He even raises his hands, big and strong. And then you can count in 2 seconds. That was 1, that was 2. He lowers his hands. He knows he's been had. He knows that example, it represents what he was doing to his kids. And I gotta give a lot of credit to my dad, because at that moment, he could have just ignored it, but he looked straight at Miss Young's eyes and said, is that what you mean? Miss Young said, that's what I mean. I think my job is done here. So she excused herself and she left. And ever since then, we still went to Mexico every year, but the trip shrank from 3 months to 3 weeks centered around Christmas vacation. And when we came back, we would not stop in Southern California. We did not stop in Central California. We went straight to Stockton. So Stockton became our home. That's when our education began to get traction. Now, a lot of people always say, well, that's great, but you're still a member of a farm-working family living at or near poverty, and how does a kid in your socioeconomic situation dare to dream to become an astronaut? I'll tell you, that dream was conceived when I was 10 years old. I was lucky enough to watch the very last Apollo mission, Apollo 17. I watched it just like the rest of America did. Except we had an old black and white TV. You guys remember that? You guys are old enough back into technology, black and white TV. We could not afford cable, so we had rabbit ear antennas, just like that cartoon there. And I would sit just like Charlie Brown is sitting there watching that TV. Especially when I saw astronaut Gene Cernan walking on the surface of the moon. Especially when I would hear and see the reporter, still remember his name, Walter Cronkite, narrating that moonwalk. I was mesmerized. I would even go outside. It was a cold December night, and I would see the moon almost full. And then I would come back and see and hear Gene Cernan on TV. And that's when it hit me. That's when I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be an astronaut. And the best thing I could have done is to share that dream with my father. Because I remember we were getting ready to go to bed. My dad was walking in front of me. And I told my dad, he said, yes, son, I know what I want to be when I grow up. He said, what's that? I want to be an astronaut. He almost trips on himself. I threw him for a curve. He turned around in a challenging tone, the way he always is, in bad mood. You want to be what? Ordinarily, I would have been scared, but I was so excited by what I saw on TV, I even said it with an attitude. I want to be an astronaut. He lifts up his hands, points to the kitchen. So let's go to the kitchen. Okay, that's when I got scared. Because in this kitchen, only 3 things happen. And two already happened. The first thing that happened is every day after school, my mom sits us down in the kitchen table and she feeds us a snack before dinner. But then she doesn't let us get up until we finish our homework. So she baits us with food, and now we're stuck doing homework. Works every day like a charm. That was done. Second thing, at my mom's insistence, we eat dinner as a family together. Third thing, and that was done. Third thing, which was not done, let's just say that was the tool shed, where they applied justice. Now you understand my concern. So I go sit down scared, but he wasn't mad. He sits down next to me, crosses his hands, and he says, "What's this about you want to be an astronaut?" And I just proceeded to tell him everything I learned from Walter Cronkite, that the moon was 250,000 miles away, that this is the very last Apollo mission, but we were building a new vehicle, and we're sure to go back, and that I wanted to be part of it. And he must have saw the determination of a 10-year-old boy. Because I'll tell you guys, the power of parental empowerment is great. Because he validated that dream. He immediately told me, "I think you can do it." And that just changed my view of everything, because I thought he was going to say, "Don't dream too big," or "This is a silly dream." He validated the dream. But he not only did that, and mind you, this man only has a third grade education, but he had the wisdom to say, if you really want to do this, follow this simple 5-ingredient recipe, son. And I told him, "What is it, Dad?" Simple. Number 1, determine your purpose in life. What is it that Jose wants to accomplish? I blurted it out. So I want to be an astronaut. Figured out 1 out of 5 done, I'm almost there. Second, he says, recognize how far you are from your goal. Well, I looked down at our kitchen floor, half-peeling linoleum floor. We lived in a 2-bedroom dilapidated rental in the worst part of Stockton. And I knew I could get in trouble saying this, but I said it anyway. I said, "Dad, I can't be any further than this." He didn't get mad, he kind of chuckled, but I thought he was going to slap me. He said, "I'm glad you recognize that, son, because the third thing you got to do is you got to draw yourself a roadmap from where from where you are, and clearly by your smart remarks you know where you're at, to where you want to go. You have to know the way to your destination. Draw yourself a map." So what's the fourth one, Dad? You're doing it already, son. You got to prepare yourself according to the challenge. You got to go to college. And you picked a big challenge. And then he said, fifth and final. He pointed outside the kitchen window and says, "You know that effort you put out working, picking fruits and vegetables, Saturdays and Sundays, 7 days a week during the summer, with your siblings and your mom and dad?" I said, "Yes." He pointed to my books on the kitchen table and says, "You put that effort here. And when you get a job, you put it in your job." His parting words was, "Always give more than what people ask for." I remember going to bed so happy because I said, "Wow, my dad not only thinks I could be an astronaut, but he gave me a recipe how to do it." And I'll tell you guys, I use this recipe still today because it works. It worked for me getting selected as an astronaut. It works for me in life. The only thing I add is the 6th ingredient, because you notice there's another ingredient there. Word of the day, perseverance, means never give up.